What?
It's only 17.
17. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's all we're going to do.
All right.
I give up.
Hey, man, you're doing so great.
I know. We did it perfectly, or at least I did it perfectly.
I know that we're going to record button. See you. We're going to see you performing at the Monsters of Rock tour this summer.
Yeah. Well, you know, Winger.
Hart and Ozzy Osbourne and Van Halen and, you know.
Anybody need a guitarist? I'm there for you guys. I can play all of them. In fact, if they all go on tour together, you just need one guitar player.
Dio will be there.
Yeah. Oh, Dio. You know that? Have you ever heard that guy?
Exactly.
That guy is a smart dude. Have you ever seen an interview with that guy?
Who? Ronnie James Dio?
Yeah. Not only has he has a ridiculous voice. It's amazing, right? And you know, he's pretty old now, but he still has it. Just like what's his name? Dickerson, the guy from Iron Maiden. Come on, guys, help me out. Come on, Marc. I know you guys are big Iron Maiden fans out there in Spain.
I only know Eric Dickerson.
Bruce Dickerson. Yeah. He was a opera singer.
Oh, okay.
And I think he, fencing. He has other things that he's famous for, but wonderful voice, awesome. But Kip Winger, pretty amazing vocalist too. And I was inspired to learn that song, which I've been trying to learn for quite some time. Finally figured it out, and it's all because of you, Rob. You brought up 17, one of the greatest rock songs, and you know how we do it. We bring you the best from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. Heavy metal, friggin' grunge.
Yeah, and since on Coffee Talk we're often winging it, we figured Winger was the best way to bring that to you.
Yes. And David, according to David, we're completely irreverent. What the hell's that about?
We are irreverent.
Oh my God.
Yes.
We are irreverent. This is like watching Sports Center on ESPN. We are totally irreverent.
ESPN Ocho.
Yeah.
Ocho. We're on the Ocho.
Leonard,
exactly.
So
pressing catch.
This song that you were practicing, did you download sheet music using open source technology to learn this song?
I think I didn't. I used proprietary, and it was absolutely secure, if that's your question. Which, for some reason, I have a funny feeling that's what we're going to be talking about today, right?
Wow. Yes. I wanted to plug that in. My plan B was to ask Rob, who seems to be in a vineyard.
He thinks he's Jack.
Somewhere.
Where are you, Jack?
If you're not drinking wine at a bar, you might be drinking beer.
Hops.
So
I thought that was wheat, but yeah.
I am reporting live from Loftus Ranches in Yakima, Washington, which is the global center of the hops universe, along with Bavaria. Gosh, this ranch here is like one of the top 5 largest hops ranches on the whole planet. And so a lot of beer is coming out of this place. I'll kind of pan around. I'm literally sitting on the ground in a hops field.
Nice.
And you can see they're on trellises, right? The hops are manually wound to go up these kind of threads, these ropes up to the top there. And that's how they grow up. If you're driving by, you'll see all these big V structures. And the reason I'm here is because I'm a total legit IoT person who's getting my hands dirty, making the shit real. Okay.
All right. Love it.
And so it's pretty exciting. In the last 24 hours, we've deployed about 15 sensors through this field number 1. And so we're getting temperature, humidity, soil moisture, air quality, lat long, altitude, air, a few other things, and connecting it to Thunderstruck and the data is flying in over cellular. And so we're using LTE-M, also known as Cat-M1. And
Not
so
5G.
no,
Make IoT great again.
yeah, and so because the technology with Thunderstruck is IP based, and so NB-IoT wouldn't work for that because that's it's kind of like doing LoRa and stuff like that. It's not IP based, so we'd have to have a gateway. So anyway, each device is streaming this telemetry in, and Thunderstruck is controlling how often they send it in, and we're routing data to different places. The data comes in. Right now we're demonstrating routing it to AWS, Azure, GCP, and Ericsson storage. With the customer, they have easily were able to get their ETL tool. I think they use Fivetran to connect to and suck the data out of Ericsson storage. And they had it up and running in a Tableau dashboard, like in no time.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so I'll just say, fingers crossed, so far so good. Data's been streaming in all night, and the fact that they're thrilled. They're already seeing data in their Tableau dashboards, and so they're super happy. Today we're going to demonstrate the security capabilities.
Okay, awesome. You're gonna have
How do you demonstrate that? How do you demonstrate the security capabilities of the system?
We're gonna do some denial of service attacks on the infrastructure, and so we have the actual devices who will keep doing their thing. We have a whole other set of other cellular devices that will have go rogue and start sending data at ridiculously high frequencies really often. Plus, I've got software device simulators, running on laptops, and so we'll spin up hundreds of those, and so we'll simulate denial of service attacks. Because basically, it's kind of it's a layered security approach. Obviously, you have the baseline: is the device enabled or not? We enforce encryption. We actually check inside the code: is this coming over TLS? Even though it usually wouldn't work otherwise. Then we'll check payload size, expected payload size of the telemetry for a given device. This device we're using, it's an acronym. It's Ardesco, and it was co-developed by Ericsson and Nordic Semiconductor with the help of Sigma, all those folks up in Sweden. And so we built this cellular IoT device that gives us a lot of fun stuff out of the box. So we will have a certain payload size. So we're expecting, but right now the payload is less than 1K. And so we will start sending like giant payloads, order of magnitude larger payloads, have the system react to that, disable that flow frequency, expecting maybe once a minute or once an hour. And when it starts getting zillions of things every millisecond, it'll recognize that, it'll shut down that flow. We're also we grab the source IP addresses from all the devices. And so we also have you build in the valid IP address ranges that you expect your telemetry to come from. So if it's not coming from there, AKA, one of those countries, then we're going to shut that down. Anyway, I've got a whole bunch of layers of security.
Well, and are you sharing? Are you sharing? I don't know. It makes me think of AgStack Foundation that's working with Linux to do a bunch of open source ag. So are you sharing your project with the wild once you have a successful launch over there?
That's a good question. Right now, so this project's an internal Ericsson project within the Ericsson One program that I'm going through, which is kind of a startup accelerator VC thing inside Ericsson. The goal to create new product lines for the company. Potentially it could be spun off, or it could be a JV. And so whether or not the whole thing can be shared and be open source may not be 100% up to me, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Obviously aspects of it have to be open source, like the SDKs that, we have the universal SDK that makes it run on any device and connect to any backend without the device caring or knowing. So we'll provide that in a direction. Obviously that part's got to be open source. But we'll see how it goes. But right now, this is an MVP proof of value, and we're, you can imagine when you're doing an MVP, it's about learning, right? And so, and seeing how the customer, the system itself, there's a GUI, kind of this. It probably, it's a touch first user interface that can run on tablets. It kind of harkens back to my time teaching the world how to build Windows Phone apps, and so it kind of has the Metro look and feel. It's running in dark mode, and it could run on Surface tablets and things like that. But it's huge UI elements, touch first. We're expecting, because you would expect, especially you can imagine in agriculture, there could be people with tablets walking through fields and stuff like that, and fat fingering stuff, right? So we make sure it's super easy. But yeah, you observe how the customer uses it, right? Just like on a lot of projects, and get tons of feedback. And we are getting tons of feedback. What works well? What are we missing? How do we improve it? So it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, that is fun. Wow.
Yeah, totally.
That's like your guys' lives. That's awesome.
And did you get this question that probably it's not it doesn't make a lot of sense to ask to Ericsson, but so some customers were asking me in my previous jobs, what should we do if you disappear? No, with the software. No,
that's a legitimate question. They have not asked me. But you know what? It's a good point, because you and I and others, we've all done a lot of startups, and we've faced that problem, whatever the software happened to be that we were building or whatever the solution was. Because you're right, big companies, that's always the struggle as a startup, right? Is the company may love what you're building, but they're afraid to take a chance, a bet on you, because they're worried you may disappear. And so I know lots of startups talk about the idea of putting software code in escrow. So if you die, they can come get the code. Obviously, right now, the code belongs to a giant Fortune 500 company. And, actually part of my pitch around Thunderstruck and being this global data, kind of a data broker, router kind of thing, with a lot of other value add, was it really has to be a big company, because so much of this is based on trust. Because you're being trusted to have data streams from millions of devices flowing through your system to go to someone else's system. We're not trying to be in the IoT platform business. We would route it to the things.io, or we'd route it to Azure IoT or whatever, or to an analytics package. Like in this case with a customer, the routing ultimately is going to Snowflake. And then from Snowflake, they're using Tableau. And so kind of if you think about the pitch of Ericsson, we're just kind of this intermediary third party Switzerland, but really in Sweden, company that is about close to half the internet traffic flows through our gear. And so we're not playing favorites, and we're here to help everybody. And that's what Thunderstruck's trying to do for IoT, is help everybody lift all boats. Primary goal, accelerate time to value, and then provide security and flexibility.
When they asked Rob, like, hey, what happens if you disappear? You know what he did? He reached out to his wallet, a physical wallet, not a Bitcoin wallet, and pulled out a canceled check with this number right there. And then we're like, bam, not going anywhere. Dinero. We have funding, legit. We're good, baby. Let's do this. Let's go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Verizon.
You're welcome.
You can check on the blog of Google how they close products, and they have a lot of dinero as well. So
that's a good point.
They can say, hey, next week we are going to close this product. What the hell? We are using this for, in another case, like companies buying other companies just to close down. So currently we are using a couple of services that has been acquired by bigger companies, and they just they say, hey, in a year we are going to shut down this service. Yeah. We have a lot of dinero.
That's a fair point. It probably leads into us talking about security and talking about open source, is because for something that would provide service to so many, impartial service to so many devices and customers, my thinking was always either you have to be a giant company that you can trust and won't go out of business, or you have to open source the whole thing so that it belongs to everyone. So it belongs to everyone. Yeah.
Create a community and then make something to like create the business model on that. But
exactly. You're basically Red Hat it.
Yeah, and so you can imagine like a lot of things with IoT, global, system integrators, consulting firms are a lot of times the tip of the spear on that stuff, and so we're working with an SI here, and the fact, because ultimately they're data folks. They're about data and insights, and but they need to get the data out from these places quickly and securely. So anyway, we'll see how it goes, man. But so far, so good.
Well, let's start some arguments. So open source security, and the person less equipped to talk about it is going to start. So that's me. So if it's open source and something bad happens, I left something exposed somewhere, I'm going to fix it right away, right? Because it's open source, it's for the better of the community. So is that a good thing versus proprietary, where it's like, oops, how long do we lie about it, folks? Do we say anything? I mean, we don't have to. It's proprietary. So what's the view? Is open source security the answer because of the of the community aspect? You screwed up, you own it, and you fix it for the community versus what happens? Because every time we read about a breach happened. This information was siphoned. Oh, by the way, they knew about it 17 years ago, but they've just told you. So let's start there. Teach me something, guys.
Not everybody at once.
Marc, I mean, this is your baby, man. I'm not going to say, I'm going to learn. My ears are open.
Yeah, I'm not an expert neither, but I have been working a bit on it. Yeah. But I feel that, you never can be like, there are always new angles to work on. But I would separate, like, first of all, open source from security. So let's talk about open source. The good thing, if you create an open source project, if you have funding or you create something that it's interesting, the good thing there is that you can create a community. Yeah. And the community can, if they love what you do, they can help you to evolve the project. And that's really nice. And that means that a lot of wise brains all around the world are taking care of your product. And they are investing hours, and you're and that those hours are not on your payroll. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really interesting because people think that your product is great, and they want to help you to make it better. Okay, so that's one point. And I think that for IoT it makes a lot of sense. I think we start to see this philosophy, at least as far as I know, on databases. So like in the 80s, 90s, we had these closed databases. But then in the 2000s, started to come these NoSQL databases that were completely open source. And you could get them or even contribute on the systems. And their business model was to have like, okay, you need this database. Okay, we can make it for your company. And that was the business model of these companies. And they are huge, like MongoDB, DataStax. These companies are huge just with this business model. And I think this is great. And I think this opened the path to other companies to create these open source business models. On IoT, as I told you, so when I was at the Things I.O., I was on a lot of meetings where the last question was, okay, if you disappear, what? So what? And I had this in mind, like, okay, if we are going to disappear, we can open source the technology. So you don't need to we don't need to get into this scroll thing, but we will open source everything and you can get that. But actually, that's very complex if you have shareholders and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's not that easy. But now at Balena, actually, this is really interesting because most of the projects are open source. The only project that it's not open source is where we get our salaries paid, that it's Balena Cloud. But if you don't want to use, so we have like a lot of projects open source. We have a Linux operating system, which is open source. We have a container tool, which is open source, except some parts that you have the binary, but everything else is open source. And you have Balena Etcher to flash SD cards, which is open source. You have, what else? A hardware that is open source. And then you have this Balena Cloud, which is not open source, which is how customers pay us our salaries. But on the other hand, we create Open Balena, that it's exactly the same with less features, that it's open source. And we have a big community there on all of these projects, by the way, of people collaborating on introducing new features or introducing improvements that they would like to see, introducing issues. And just with that, it's enough to see that the community, the companies, these SI companies, etc., that are using the product, they like the product and they try to help us to improve it. Okay, then on security, if you have this big community helping you, if you have problems, maybe they as well can help you. But I don't have a lot of examples on security and open source that can defend my thesis. I don't know if, Rob or Leonard or you.
Yeah, sure. I guess the negative side, and kind of David stirring the pot there was, so yes, there's always talk about open source is better. It's transparent. There's more eyeballs. There's more people looking at the code. Therefore, as opposed to commercial software where it's some company like Microsoft or whoever. But
it turns out it's better. Open source is better than closed source.
But I hear lots of open source people saying that they're better because of this. They say more eyeballs, more people are looking at it. And of course, they're not always 100% focused on security. They're trying to make better quality code, right? And I guess what happened not too long ago that kind of freaked people out around security and open source was lots of people were using OpenSSL to provide, TLS tunnels. Like everybody was using it. And so whatever the last version, OpenSSL 3 or whatever it was. And it turns out there was some big 0-day and all kinds of flaws in it. And people started getting hacked and everything. And so they go, well, let's go look at that giant OpenSSL community of developers. And guess what they found? They found one guy. And it turns out it wasn't a giant community. It was one guy with hardly any money maintaining this bit of code that the whole planet was using. And so I think it freaked people out to realize that it's not always lots of eyeballs, because certainly, just like Marc has used a lot of open source technology and makes open source technology, Lumada was all based on all kinds of open source stuff, right? And at Hitachi, but part of and you always say, we want to use this open source technology. It meets our requirements, but it also needs to be part of a large community with lots of active developers and everything. And a lot of times you can see, like if you're at apache.org or Eclipse, you can see how active that project is and how many people are participating. And you can also see lots of open source projects that look like they're dead, where nobody's participating. And usually you would stay away from those because it means no one's going to help you if there's something wrong, or you got to help yourself, right? So it's a tricky thing. I've heard lots of people in the telecom industry being afraid of using open source because they're paranoid that there'll be backdoors.
Let me explain you another story, and that I remember now when you were explaining about OpenSSL. So, for example, the Things Network, right? We had Inke here in the IoT Happy Hour some dozens of episodes ago. So actually, the LoRa wall has been using these LoRa gateways that the Things Network uses. Use a packet forwarder. The packet forwarder is a software that is running on the gateways that gets the radio messages and translate them into IP messages. Okay, so actually, the first packet forwarder that was used was a proof of concept. And sometimes it's happened like, hey, this is a proof of concept. This is not intended to be on production. Oh, yes, of course, no worries. And then like 10 years later, it's like a snowball, like, okay, this was not proposed to be on production, but it is, sorry. And and the code sucks. It doesn't scale. And then people needs to change from V2 to V3. Etc. But I don't know. I don't know the story of OpenSSL, but maybe that's the thing. No, okay. I just put this on on product like as a proof of concept to see what people say, and from a proof of concept it gets into like a production tool as
what you're saying is very common. It happens more often than people realize. It also happens in hardware. I remember when I was part of the Windows Mobile and Windows Phone team, and we would create reference designs for smartphones and put them out there. And then you're supposed to use that reference design to build your own special device. And then we'd see a whole bunch of devices coming from China that were just basically the reference design that we gave them. And they made a production phone, it's like, that was not the intent. This is not for production. This is a reference design. Go build something on it. But maybe they were thinking, well, you know what? I don't want to waste all that time. I'm just going to ship this thing and put a case on it or whatever.
That's called lost in translation.
Imagine the proof of concepts that are on production on closed software, right? Even on open source, you can have at least the note or the disclaimer from the owner or the author of that code, but on closed code, I don't want to imagine what's going on there.
Yeah,
I feel like go ahead, Leonard.
No, I was just going to say, everyone talks about transparency, but transparency is kind of like a double-edged knife, right? Well, it cuts both ways. And so the question is who is contributing, who's participating in the community. And so, I think with proprietary software, the companies that put that stuff out, whether it's closed or open, mostly closed, right? They have the weight of liability that they have to face. And so the question for open source is, depending on how you look at open source, because there's open source technology, then there's using open source, there's contributing open source, there's, I think we may speak about open source a little bit too generically, and, but depending on what our mode of engagement in the open source community is, the question is who holds the ultimate liability? And if it's shared liability, then it's diluted liability, which means it's really hard to hold anyone accountable unless there are some people that do the MongoDB stuff or the Red Hat stuff and have the lawyers to basically, be there in case those companies get sued for the versions of open source technologies and software, hardware, blah, 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 whatever that they put out to the market. And so I think, these generalized statements of, we're better because, or we're more secure, blah, 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 because we're more transparent. I think I really don't buy it. Quite honestly, I don't buy it at all.
Leonard,
but that's neither a good thing or a bad thing. It just is what it is, right. And you can sell the downside of transparency very easily and say, okay, that means that hackers will know, you have loose lips that will sink the ship at any moment, and that's not a good thing either, right? As much as you might.
Do you think we have it easier or harder explaining open source security in IoT versus something else? So I know, a bunch of times we've come up that when we're discussing about, an IoT solution and we start a hardware, it's like, okay, so there's like a processor, a microcontroller, connectivity module, and then the network and the cloud and the app and all these things. We understand that is components. Some of these components, could be open source, some could be proprietary. But if we were to if we had a security analyst here, like a practitioner, and analyzing something that was compromised, this expert would likely come up with the area which was compromised. They could tell, hey, in this case, you left an open port. Culprit, right? And it wasn't the hardware. It's like, you're an idiot. You left the open port. So all this to say, in IoT, where we rely in so many overall components as part of a solution, I believe that it is unfair to use blanket statements like open source security in IoT is bad. It's like,
that's all.
No. because it's like, no, where, is it at the, applet, or someone, again, left something here. And I think we struggle a lot with that because we have more parts. It's very different to say, this, right? Versus, what Rob is working with at Thunderstruck in this valley of hops that I would want to be in right now.
You're making a great point, dude. Probably 80% of the quality of security of any deployed solution is the implementation. And then part of that is design. And it doesn't matter how secure all the bits and pieces are and all the different interfaces are. To your point, man, if you leave one port open that shouldn't be open, there's our hole. And Rob, you said last week, some of the hacks are just like straight up simple. And it's usually because somebody's like sending an email out of the network that they shouldn't. And it's a phishing attack or some of these really lame things, right? This like venereal disease kind of transmissible, digital stupidity that creates these holes, these security.
Stop clicking.
Stop clicking shit is basically what it's like. If you don't know who it came from, don't click it. But people do. I mean, there's people that store some weird stuff on their corporate computers. I've seen it in a corporate environment. It's like, dude, you really should not be
shouldn't
looking at that kind of stuff on your corporate laptop.
Yeah. Why? So the reason the open source and security has been in the news lately is has to do with I'm not going to name the university, even though they've already been named, but they're a contributor to the Linux kernel, and so the whole news story popped up because they were just part of the Linux kernel community of building that thing. And they added stuff to the kernel that made it possible to add exploits later. And they came out and said, hey, look what we did. And I think they were doing it just as a demonstration to show how easy it is for a contributor to an open source project to hack the project and put in backdoors. And I guess our friend in the Portland area, Linus Torvalds, running the show for Linux, banned them instantly. And so, but I think the demonstration they were showing was, look how easy it is for developers or community developers to commit code changes that even if they're not the actual backdoor, it lays the groundwork for the backdoor, and where you can slowly, quietly over time put in this bad stuff. And it's kind of scary. And so that's been in the news lately. That's why you see link bait headlines like I posted from one article where they were saying open source is dead, or it's at the end of the road because it can't be trusted.
Well,
it's people. Can you trust people is what it comes down to. Developers, contributors, Yeah,
and guys like you and Marc are the Avengers, and Hydra has many heads. If we were to take this to the
Hail Hydra,
Hail Hydra. I mean, it's like friggin', seriously though, right? I mean, there could be millions of these kind of groups that form over the next 1,000 years.
And the question here as well is, how as a consumer or as a proprietary of the customer where you are installing these devices, so they have to trust in different layers. Like I have to trust the data that you send me, but as well I have to trust what is running on these devices. How do you prove that you are not running a Bitcoin miner on the device, for example? You are taking the advantage of their electricity or something like that.
They're not doing that, Marc. They're buying abandoned power plants. Okay, that's what's happening right now. They're not going to bother with a little gateway.
We bought Chernobyl. What does that say?
Make IoT great again.
Excellent. That's a great hat to have. I'm sure if people saw you wearing that hat, they wouldn't have enough time to actually read the funny lines. They would just see the hat and shoot you in the face.
Yes,
exactly. That happened.
In IoT speak, they would see the command and actuate.
Yes, they would. They would.
Oh.
That is so true. Oh my gosh. Oh my. Wow. Good times.
No, good times.
Yeah.
No, but the thing is, that's getting really interesting, because it's not only how do you demonstrate that the open source code that you have on a repo, it's actually running on the device, and the services that are running there are the ones that you are saying. I mean, you can get into really deep to really trust, to decide if you trust a company or not. No, how can you trust that your telco operator of the router that you have at home, it's not running a Bitcoin miner?
Yeah, it's true.
Or your telephone or your mobile phone.
That's a tough question for a consumer to answer. I mean, like Alan Close, that's the equipment I need to get the internet. Like, that's it. That is the extent of my knowledge right there. And even if I was to unscrew it and take it apart, what am I looking at? What are these things? Yeah. It's blinking.
Speaking of phones, I mean, you've probably been reading recently in the last week about this Pegasus spyware that got on everybody's phones, including those super secure iPhones. I can imagine an extreme scenario where I go, I'm going to do a factory reset of my iPhone every day and start fresh. Because I don't know.
Is that what it takes? So Rob, is this because if you have something, hardware persistent attacks are really, really difficult. Therefore, by you either power cycling or doing a hard reset, is that what you're thinking about, just to avoid that scenario?
Because some of the spyware gets to your phone and it clearly is user mode software. And so either sometimes it's easy enough just to reboot the phone. Sometimes you would have to do a hard reset and start from scratch. But to your point, if there's code inside the hardware or firmware, that you're right, that won't save you.
Okay.
Yeah. And like we found all kinds of hardware where made in China, where there's an extra little tiny component that no one noticed on the main board, the motherboard, that was actually wirelessly sending stuff, and the operating system was unaware of it. Nobody was, it was just like, because hardware is hard, and hardware is a great place to put sneaky stuff.
Yeah, but if we have heads of states, in the West, getting their devices that are presumably, have all these resources to make sure that their iPhone is, unhackable, and then they get hacked. I mean, are we just back to, if you're the top, they're going to get to you if they want to get to you, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. So it's a best effort security model. There you go.
Well,
best effort.
What's ironic as hell is what you just said, is that all of a sudden iPhones are considered the most secure handset, right? Because, just
they have been
6 years ago. Yeah. I mean, but I still think that they are, and they probably have the best capability to deploy remediations across all their users. So, and I
which
think
takes us back to the fact that Apple is a commercial entity, and it's not an open source phone like Android is. And in this case, you're getting a better experience and better security because Apple is a walled garden, and all the negative stuff people say, but they're better. They're just better.
Yeah. And then, as a consumer, you are prone to trust them more, and they have a lot at stake to maintain that trust, So when that whole thing with the model training for the Siri thing came up, man, they shut that thing down with the quickness along with everyone else. But their advantage is they already had NPUs sitting on their devices to do local ML anyway. So they already designed a lot of that stuff into the architecture of their products. So I think that's an important lesson for everyone else. And I always think of Apple as a good model for privacy first, and maybe even trust first. The open source community needs to figure out, well, how do we implement something like that? right? Because it's necessary. And, especially if you want to keep things down at a granular level, where what I mean by that is a disaggregated, small developer level, and be able to instill trust, that becomes important. Otherwise, everything just rolls up to a Red Hat or a MongoDB or some larger entity that basically is no different than Apple or Google or what have you. They suck up all the oxygen in the room, right? Even though it's open source. So, I mean, these are like some of those activist developer questions for those folks is, how do you keep this stuff like sort of, idealistically pure versus letting it go full blown corporate? Because, right, I mean, the whole thing about open source is this is all a community kumbaya thing. It wasn't necessarily the intent that, one corporate entity figures out how to make the stuff telco ready or telco grade or enterprise grade and then run off with all the money. Then make actually lives for smaller developers more difficult. But hey, I want to share a couple of things that I got out of this conversation. It's such a great conversation. There's actually, I was, listening to what you guys are talking about. I think there's like actually an argument for do-it-yourself IoT. And that builds an argument that developers are good, and, if you think about all these support issues, the security issues, if IoT or this operational technology and using IoT technologies to drive some large business value is important to you, it's good to have some solid developers that can help you build the stuff in-house. And then you guys, that person is plugged into the open source community and they continue to maintain your code. It's a change of mindset. It's like going back. Do you know what I'm saying? Instead of farming everything out and not really being able to trust anything, bring someone you trust in and make IT part of the company again. Make it a strategic thing, because right now everyone outsources that stuff. And you give it to a service provider and they farm that out to some other foreign country. Maybe it's Belarus or, really close to some of those countries that are not exactly all that friendly to us and our enterprises. And, bring that stuff in-house. Maybe that's what has to happen, especially if you're really committed to this open source stuff and you don't want to pay the big bucks for the proprietary stuff, right? So that, and then the other thing is protect your environs. Maybe we need to, instead of, going back to all the Battlestar Galactica stuff that we talk about, it's just like friggin', start looking at air gapping as a decision in your decision-making tree as you're architecting your solutions or making, solutions about decisions around how you're going to solution your IoT stuff. So anyways, I'm done.
From the first point that you mentioned, Leonard, I think that a lot of companies can use open source as a marketing tool. So if you use it well, I think that's a good point if you're a startup. So, but yeah, you have to use it well and build something that, makes sense.
Right. But going back to what I was saying before is, what do you mean by open source? Are you using open source technology? Are you contributing? Are you, supporting open source? I think those mean different things, So I think there needs to be some clarity there because, like your point, a lot of people like to use it as a marketing buzzword, but then they're not really open source. What they're doing is they're saying, we support it, but we have our own proprietary stuff.
Well, like a lot of open source companies have made lots of great products, message queues, databases, all kinds of things, have been not too thrilled by a particular giant cloud provider who is a user of all that open source stuff, and they find ways that they monetize it, and the makers of this technology are the labor, and they never see a dollar. And I know there's a lot of frustration around that,
And they create and it's actually, they say that we support open source technology, but they're creating a walled garden platform. That's the other thing, right? I mean, they're basically doing the stealth Red Hat-ish, MongoDB-ish type of thing, but they're going to market saying, well, we support open source. But then once you get in, it's actually kind of a walled garden. It's hard to get out because it's not, it uses open source technology, but the implementation it has certain types of proprietary or ecosystem dependent plugins or interfaces. So getting out of that becomes really difficult, right? You actually get walled in, even though it's open source, quote unquote, open source.
Yeah, these lock-in strategies are not really beautiful, but nice, Rob.
Yeah. You can see, maybe you can see
he's not locked in.
You can see the irrigation lines here, the kind of the drip irrigation there, maybe if I'm pointing at it right.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine we're on
I created an irrigation system here as well. I'm testing an irrigation system. But look, with the solar panel.
That's great. I love it. I love
it. You guys are awesome, man.
Well, you know what?
Oh my God.
Is water a precious resource on this planet? Yeah.
Exactly.
And so we need to be smart about water and irrigation. And so agriculture is the biggest user of water in the world. And we know one state in the United States that is in big trouble right now because the water is gone.
It's precious and destructive at the same time, as the folks in Germany will tell you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Yeah. True. And our hearts go out to all our German friends who are suffering.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's like, right.
And
you know, it's all those wonderful, wine regions that are getting decimated. Think about it. All those, the Rheingau region for oh my God, I can't. My brain.
Are you thinking of Germany and Rieslings?
Germany, Rieslings, yes. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, and you know what? Look, obviously, climate change, water going away, hotter temperatures. Talking to these farmers, we had this crazy heat dome thing that happened in the Pacific Northwest that affected Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. And saw heats that never seen before in history. Ever. And there are a lot of crops that burned up. They don't expect to see higher temperatures until August, but even then never expected to see what we got in June. And so there's a lot of crops that are already written off and dead for the year already.
Yeah. And there was no way to protect them. You couldn't overwater. I mean, they literally just burned because we had back to back record-setting temperature the entire day, just gone.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, David and I are probably going to have to go down and just do a quick site survey of the Willamette Valley, south of Portland, the wine country there, because they're used to doing Pinot grapes, which are a very fragile grape. It's hard to make Pinot Noir wine. And boy, you're already up against it as it is, but then you had record heat like we've never seen before in the Portland area. And those guys are in big trouble down there, and it's really sad.
Yeah.
And
are we doing anything to solve that, or?
We are. But the rest of humanity needs to get on board our train with us.
Yeah,
because we're saving the planet, or we're trying. And you know what? Look, we're doing real stuff, man. We're not just talkers.
At least you guys are amazing. Doing real.
It starts with measurement, right? You have to measure and you have to know. And then you can take action. Right. And that's what we're doing. That's what Marc's doing with his irrigation thing with his solar panel right there.
Yeah.
And there's his moisture sensor. There's his moisture sensor. And that's what I plugged in to all these hop fields yesterday. And so we're going to know, and you can get a level of moisture.
Yeah.
And it tells you when to turn the water on and when to turn it off.
Awesome. That's
no
beautiful.
AI required.
That is really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is made by P. Moroni, and they have a grow hat.
Yes,
so you can connect it to a Raspberry Pi Zero or
I like their logo. That little logo, the Grow logo. It's like really cartoony.
Awesome.
Yeah, they are really nice.
Make IoT fun.
P. Moroni, Pirate, Monkey, Robot, Ninja.
We love that. We love that.
That's awesome.
We may have to collaborate on that because, as you can imagine, to help farms and other places, right now, in the ag tech world, there are people that are making kind of these weather stations, that get all these sensors, but they're really expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars for one device, and the farmers can't afford it, or they can only put one in to cover 1,000 acres or 500 acres, and that doesn't help you. And so we have to push down the cost of these these sensor devices so that we can sprinkle them all over the place to get a real good view.
Yeah. Well, the other thing though, and this is the thing that the IoT community has to grapple with, you also have to, bring down the cost of implementation for what that means. And all that's entailed with that. Right. And so, I posted recently exactly that comment, and it's something to think about. So there could be a huge market for implementation accelerators, right? I mean, we used to do that back in the ERP days all the time. It's like, how do we accelerate and reduce the cost of implementation? And so there's a huge area of innovation there, just beyond the hardware and the software, right? Because think about it. What do they say in all the forecasts? Most of the money is going to be in services, right? Well, guess what? Services are too expensive. So IoT solutions hit a wall if everyone's going out thinking that you're going to make a gajillion dollars, and with a J, a gajillion dollars, when the problem is not worth a gajillion dollars.
Right. Huh? But should we also then think of, just bear with me here for the David Vasquez idiotic comment of the episode. No, dude, listen. We have talked quite a bit about IoT projects where the implementation cost, like the actual deployment of the thing, kills it because it's too expensive, right? We've been there, done that. So what does the open source implementation look like? If we can go to Balena Etcher right now and get all of the documentation, right? That's going to tell us how to do what I wanted. It's there, like read a paper. So why would, I would love for Marc and Rob to have hey, I've got this ag tech thingy. It's going to give you all this data. And here's what you, owner, farmer, operator, guy, gal, need to do in order to deploy this. Because if I go and do it for you, or I have to hire the guy that's going to hire the guy that's going to outsource 4 countries, by the time he comes back, it's like, dude, you're charging me $250,000 for a $10,000 problem. Get out of here with that noise. So
you know why?
Why?
It's because the system integrators, they want to charge you more hours. If they use that database, that's done in one click, and they cannot say that there are 4 people working on that. So they have to reinvent the wheel every time, and that's what it sucks. I have said tons of time to system integrators in the past, like, hey, just Google for it. Don't Google that. I'm sure that exists on GitHub. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't invest a week to do that. That should be done. Or I'm sure that you have been doing this in other projects.
Yeah, but smart guys like you, Marc, and stuff that you guys that do Balena, and what Rob's doing is you guys just create the reference solution designs and then stitch all that together. Because a lot of developers, especially the new ones coming in, they don't know where everything is. And also they don't have the experience. So these accelerators, what we used to do back in the day, and they still do it. I mean, it's a never-ending thing. It's codifying experience, right? And then taking the lowest common denominator and accelerating the shit out of that and lowering the cost. So I think IoT people need to think more like that as well. I mean, you're trying to do that with the platform stuff, but it's too down in the weeds. And that's not where the problem is in terms of the creating favorable economics for IoT, especially the stuff way out at the edge.
And let me give a last point of IoT, open source, and security.
Okay, and then we got to go because I got to jump on another call. And you take us out, okay?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but that's super. And maybe that's a question for Rob. But yeah, so bugs exist. That's not a problem. Bugs on security exist. But you have to, if you are making a hardware device, if you're making a product, you have to have like a way to upgrade the firmware. And this is something that I learned more on Balena. That's the business model that we do. So we help companies to flash as a service devices remotely. You have to have those tools, because if you have a bug, you can solve it with just redeploying a new version to all the devices that are all around the world. But if you don't have that, you are completely fucked.
Well, and if we were not going to get the explicit, we saved the earphone for last. Thanks, Marc.
Yeah, we're definitely going to eat for that one, man. Yeah, maybe. But I think...
How do you say, David? David, estás jodido.
Yeah.
Straight out of Compton, guys.
That was awesome. Someone take us out.
I'll do it because I'm back. So, folks, if you made it this far, we thank you for your attention in joining us to solve real-world problems, open source or otherwise. Remember to share, like, tell your friends, your mom, your cousin, everyone about IoTCoffeeTalk.com. Find us on LinkedIn, YouTube. This is not sponsored. This is fun. And we want to help the community, no pun intended, get shit done. So thank you, like, and share.
Yeah, clicking here is safe, right? It's safe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Safe click.
First.
Awesome, guys. Take care. All right. See you guys.
Adios.
Adios.
Adios.